And we have liftoff. We are live tonight with Coach Jim Gibson from VMI Wrestling. Coach, thanks for joining us. Before we get rocking and rolling, let everyone know where they can find you, where they can find the wrestling team, where they can follow VMI Wrestling.
Yeah, personally, all my handles are Coach Gibby, 197, and then all of our VMI wrestling stuff is just VMI_wrestling.
Awesome. Coach, what we like to do with all of our guests is we try to present a little bit of a through line and kind of make a connection. Jimmy and I are both wrestlers. Jimmy wrestled in college. I ran cross country and track in college, but we've
Nice.
stayed lifelong fans and we've also dabbled in the coaching. I was coaching last year down here in South Carolina. And when I was doing some research for the podcast,
Mhm.
you had a mic'd up episode on YouTube that I saw and it caught my eye because last year when I was coaching, I always used to talk to the kids about having a poker face.
Yeah,
And you said something in the room one day that really resonated. You said, you can be tired, just don't look tired.
that's
And,
right.
that to me, that's my, teaching the kids to have a poker face. It's okay. You can be exhausted, but you can't show them that you're exhausted because that's like a shark smelling blood in the water. And so, yeah, it was a great little mic'd up you had. And then also what we like to do is, everyone talks about the Big Ten and maybe the Big 12 and some of the Big Five schools that, everyone kind of always talks about. But what we like to do is highlight some of the up and coming programs, some of the smaller programs, both in Division 1 and then also some of the D2, D3, and NAIA schools. And last year we had Coach Ryan LeBlanc from the Citadel on,
Yep,
and we found out a lot of unique things about the Citadel that are different from, say, like Air Force or Navy or West Point. And so,
sure.
also in listening to you on another podcast, you kind of talked and had some similarities, I guess, to the Citadel, where
Yeah,
there's a big military component to the school, but
sure.
there's not necessarily an obligation for the student athlete to go on to one of the branches of the military, which I found fascinating that
Yeah,
some kids are going to, a school like yours or the Citadel for like the leadership qualities that come with going to a military institute. So I guess that would be a good place to start in
sure.
talking about VMI and what brought you there, but what also sets VMI apart from, some of the other military academies.
Yeah, a little bit about my background. So I grew up in Western Pennsylvania, right on the Ohio border. I wrestled my collegiate career at Edinboro University under Tim Flynn and Lou Roselli, were my two coaches while I was at Edinboro. Following graduation, I got into coaching pretty much immediately. I moved from Edinboro to Clarion. I spent 5 years as an assistant at Clarion. And then I transitioned from Clarion to Bucknell University, where I spent 6 years. So I pretty much spent my whole competitive career and coaching career, in Pennsylvania prior to coming to VMI. And just with my coaching background, Clarion being a small state school, Bucknell being a small private elite academic school, I think VMI was a pretty good fit kind of from that operational aspect, um, combining the two experiences. VMI is a, state supported, small enrollment school, with elite level academics. So that kind of, piqued my interest as far as just my background. And I'm feeling like being a good fit, to come in here and help this program, thrive and get back to some of the tradition and history that it once had. And then, I believe in what this school produces, right? Its mission and, the type of young men and women that they're trying to, build and send out into the, the workforce or the armed services, whatever it may be. Um, I think this place has the reputation that it does for a reason. And that's, comes down to the lifestyle that they live here, for the 4 to 5 years that they're on post.
And with that being said, what are some of for the folks that are listening, what is some of the tradition at VMI with the wrestling program?
Yeah, I mean, there's over 100 years of wrestling here. They started wrestling at VMI in the 1920s. So, I mean, we're a pretty long storied, program that I don't think a lot of people know of, right? You think about wrestling history, and typically VMI is not really on that list, but when you're talking about, 100+ years of tradition, at least from the school, right? They take a lot of pride in the wrestling program here. And I think the mental fortitude, right? And, the stuff that it takes to be successful in the sport goes right along with, what it takes to go through a challenging place like VMI, right? It's your non-traditional, higher education setting. And these guys are, you know, forced to go through some adversity almost on a daily basis to be able to make it through this place. And I think that's, goes back to that reputation and what it produces. That's part of the reason why, these guys come out of here, more prepared to handle whatever life's going to throw at them better than most places. And, that resonated with me, just because I think that goes back to the program and the wrestling side of it. That's ultimately what I think our goal is, right? As coaches, is to, send these young men off after they graduate to be able to tackle whatever life's going to throw at them. Everyone knows life's challenging, life's hard, and what better sport to prepare you for that than wrestling, right? And you go through so many highs and lows in the sport of wrestling, throughout a season, throughout a career, sometimes on a daily basis, right? You're at a wrestling tournament, you got to wrestle a handful of matches, you're at the highest of highs, and then you're down in the lowest of lows. And ultimately how you respond to those low moments is, what's going to define your career and, sort of bring you into authentic manhood when that time comes. And, like I said, as coaches, I think that's a big part of our role is, when these guys hit those moments of adversity, is to help guide them through it so that they find a way to persevere. And especially later on in life, when they get to that moment in life when something goes wrong or something's challenging, they have the background to be able to say, hey, you know what, I persevered through something back then, with Coach Gibson and the VMI wrestling program, and I got through it. I can get through this moment now.
Amen.
Amen. Coach, you bring up the daily adversity. I'm curious to how different that college experience is to your college experience. And do you feel, does that take away from the wrestling at all, or does that add because it just makes them tougher and it makes them more regimented?
Yeah, I think it takes a little bit of the guesswork out of it, right? When I was in college, you show up as an 18-year-old and you're trying to figure out life, right? It's the first time that you're on your own. You have to make every decision for yourself the first time, who you're hanging out with, when you're going to eat, when you're going to do your homework, and sometimes I think you get these high level wrestlers that come out of high school and maybe you see some of them fizzle off a little bit, right? And I don't think it has to do so much with the sport and the training and that they can't handle that aspect of it. I think it's more that they just can't manage their life, right? Because they're maybe mom and dad did too much for them, whatever the case is, right? And I think at a place like VMI, it takes that guesswork out of it for them, right? They know they have to be at this formation at a certain time. They're going to eat at a certain time. They have all these little milestones throughout the day that they have to make sure they're hitting and doing. And I think that plays right into the living the right lifestyle when it comes to the sport of wrestling. I think more than any other sport out there, what you do away from practice and in the athletic arena is almost as important, if not more important, than what you're doing at practice every day, right? You're putting the right food in your body. Are you hanging around positive people? Are you getting enough rest? Are you staying on top of your grades so that when you are at practice, you're not distracted, right? And I gotta hurry up and rush through practice and get out of here and get back to the library because I'm behind on this paper that's due tomorrow or whatever the case is. And I think this place just does a really good job of taking that kind of out of their hands a little bit and almost forcing them to mature a little bit quicker than maybe some other places.
And I'm curious, you coach at Clarion, you coached at
Yep.
Bucknell.
Yep.
Obviously, you're the head coach at VMI, so it's a little
Mm-hmm.
bit different because you were an
Sure.
assistant there. But
Yep.
is it different for you being at a military institute, being a coach there, opposed to being at a normal college?
Yeah, definitely. One thing that is a lot different here is when I talk about that structure throughout the day, every department here owns a piece of the cadets' day, right? So like morning time, they have a formation that's military time. They have class periods throughout the day that's considered academic time. For non-athletes, they would have some more military time in the afternoon. As an athlete, that piece of the day is kind of carved out for us, right? So it's really hard to kind of get these guys out of that when they can't just show up down here in the wrestling room in the middle of the day and come do an extra workout, because they're pulled in a lot of different directions. So I think as a coach, that kind of forces us to, game plan a little bit more than maybe I have in the past, right? Because we have a certain block of time every day that we have these guys, and that's it, right? We can't kind of deviate from that. So, we got to be kind of systematic with our approach and be planned and prepared. I think more for practices and training and things like that, and specific goals that we're trying to get out of them for that day. We got to be locked in and ready to go because we just don't have the amount of time that a lot of other places have.
What does that morning formation look like? I mean, is it, are they playing revelry on,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
they're getting up and
they'll wake them up, and they'll form up with their companies. So every cadet here is assigned a particular company that they're in. They'll form them up in the morning in their company. They'll do what they call accountability roll call. Basically, one of the cadets that holds rank, right, will go through their company, make sure everyone's there and accounted for, and then they'll kind of cut them loose to start their academic day. And then they do that again in the evening time. So after the academic day is over, after our practices are over, they'll form every single cadet here up in their company and do accountability again for the evening, and then cut them loose for their evening to go do their studies, to go to dinner, whatever it is that they have to get done for that night.
and with that environment, Coach, do you find maybe different from your experience or at Clarion or at Bucknell that kids are coming in with a higher skill set of leadership qualities than, say, like a private or public institution?
I think it's not all the time, right? I think you have some guys that have military goals and want that lifestyle, and have those dreams and aspirations to go on and serve, and they're coming in and they're ready for that mentality and that atmosphere. And then you have some guys that come here for some different reasons, right? Come here maybe just as an athlete, right? And want a really good education. So they come here, and they feel like the best fit for them academically and athletically. And I hate to say just deal with it, but they kind of get through and just deal with some of the other military stuff for different reasons. Like I said, academically, athletically, whatever it is. So it's kind of twofold. You guys kind of talked about previously about having some options when you come here and not having that obligation to serve. So it's actually about a 50-50 split. There's about 1,800 cadets that go to school here, and about 50% of them go on and commission directly out of graduation, and then about 50%, get their diploma, move back into the public sector, and get a civilian job. So it's pretty even as far as the outcome and the trajectory of what these guys are doing afterwards.
And
Coach,
with
go ahead, Rich.
sorry, and with 1,800 students, I would imagine there's a pretty good percentage of that's within the athletic department too. Yeah.
Yeah, there is. I think it's right around 30%, give or take.
Okay.
So it's a pretty high percentage of athletes that do go to school here. Yeah.
And with that 50-50 split, I heard you say, and I don't want to butcher it because I'm not sure, but there's like an absurdly high number of the guys who go into the civilian sector that get jobs right out of VMI. Well, what
Yep.
is that number, and what do you think
Yep.
the reason for that is?
So it's a 98% placement rate within 3 months of graduation. That's either in graduate school or being full-time employed. So I think that goes back to that piece of, when guys make the decision to come to VMI, what it can do for them down the road, right? Is kind of that life after wrestling, life after college piece. And I think, I think it's our alumni network. I think the alumni that have gone through this place, when they're out there, running companies and CEOs or in the military, whatever they're doing, holding, high levels of position, when they're looking for employees, they know what they're getting when they hire someone from VMI, right? So I think that's a big piece of it, is the alumni network. And then secondly, the reputation of VMI, we have a thing here called the honor code, right? And it's no cadet will lie, cheat, steal, or tolerate those that do. So I mean, that's the one thing that they um, that they take a lot of pride in here. It's probably the most important thing at VMI. And, who wouldn't want to hire someone that spent 4 or 5 years in an atmosphere, where their main goal is not to lie, cheat, or steal, and it seems simple, right? You be a good person, you don't lie, cheat, or steal, but there's so much more involved in it, and just the level of seriousness and how they take that, is pretty significant. So I think just the overall reputation, the atmosphere of VMI, and people know what they're getting when they hire someone out of here.
So you mentioned that honor code
Yep,
and three adult men on this call. So we all know that's a big thing, right? It's all about integrity once you get to
yep,
a certain age, about saying something and going through with it. How do you
yep.
instill that in your program? I'm sure they have to with dealing with that at school, but how do you instill that in your program? And have you had instances where hey, you're lying or you're cheating? You might not think you are, but you are. Like,
Yeah.
how do you push that upon your wrestlers?
I think it starts off with recruiting, right? Is you wanna be able to identify and get to know the guys that you're bringing into the program as well as possible on the front end, right? And no one ever bats 1,000. You know what I mean? Recruiting, you can only get to know them so well over a short period of time, and a lot of times it's like rolling dice. But I feel like that's something that we have done really well in the past, 5.5 years that I've been here, is just identify the right people, bring the right people into the program. I think that's where it starts. We talk to everyone that we recruit about the honor code just because it is so serious and important here. So that's something we talk about on the front end. They understand that when they make the commitment to come to VMI, that's something that they have to live by. Um, so I have never personally in my program since I've been here had an issue with it. Anyone, violating that honor code or anything. So I think just VMI instills it in them already, and we don't really have to talk about it a whole lot. We got a good group of guys. I got 35 guys in my roster right now. They're all great young men, every single one of them. So it's not something we have to worry about a whole lot. The biggest thing is probably like when we travel and stuff. Um, they get kind of comfortable with their belongings. You know what I mean? They'll lay their phones and wallets out all over the place, and I'm like, guys, listen, we are not at VMI anymore. You can't just be laying your phone and wallet all around and, not expect it to maybe, get up and walk away every once in a while. You know what I mean? But because you can go to the library here and drop $100 bill down on the table and come back in 3 days, it'll still be there. It's that serious. But as far as any issues within our program, it's not really something we have to address really ever. They understand that that's why they're here and that's part of the system, and they do it.
And with the specific and unique environment at VMI, do you think that kind of helps you narrow down your recruiting pool? Does it make
Yeah,
recruiting a
absolutely.
little bit easier than at like Bucknell or Clarion?
Yeah, I think so. I didn't necessarily think that when I first got here. Like taking the job and my first year or two, I really didn't know what to expect when it came to the recruiting aspect of it. But yeah, I think it does, just because it is so unique and such a non-traditional experience that it, usually when we make a phone call and we talk to a young man, we can tell pretty quickly whether they're into it or not. It's not really, there's not much of a courting process, at least from the initial aspect. It's like, hey, this is BMI, this is what it's about, this is what we do here. And usually it's pretty quick, like, yeah, that's something I could see myself doing. I'm interested. Or, yeah, you know what, coach, that's not for me. I need to go a different direction. That usually happens pretty quickly for us in the recruiting process. So that helps narrow things down pretty significantly. I mean, we try to start off with a pretty big list because of that, where we shift through a lot of guys just to see who may or may not be a good fit. And that list usually shrinks pretty quickly, and we can narrow guys down that are good fits fairly fast.
And are there military-esque high school programs that you're looking at? Do you have a lot of people because of the environment there that are contacting you?
We do get actually a lot of interest from guys that just reach out to us that we may not necessarily know about, right? And sometimes it works out really well. Sometimes those guys fit, with what we're looking for, and it's kind of, kind of right time, right place sort of thing with guys. But then, we go out and actively recruit, as well, where we have to, right, to be able to keep up with the Joneses and, be competitive. We got to go out and try to get some of the best guys out there that we can. And then, try to, no, I don't want to say convince them, but just talk to them about the positives about this place and what it can do for them and get them, interested. And a lot of it, happens when they get here, right? I think that's the biggest thing is that we can get recruits actually here and on post. Our facilities are great. We have great people here. So usually this place is pretty pleasantly surprising for recruits and families when they first step on post.
And you brought up before that it's a state school.
Yep.
Curious to how much you try to get guys from Virginia, or because you're a
hmm
military institute, you're picking from all over the country.
Yeah. So because it is a state school, we do have a difference in and out of state tuition, right? So, our obviously our scholarship money, things like that goes farther if we can go get guys in state, right? And, Virginia has some talented guys. I think last year, our freshman class this year, I think we cleaned house in Virginia. We got some of probably the best guys in the state to stay home and come to VMI. So that's always a priority for us, is to hit the state really hard, get the best guys, keep them here. But then we also have the ability and reputation, of the school to be able to go out nationally and recruit some of the hotbeds. Being from Pennsylvania, I try to get up there and try to get a couple guys from Pennsylvania every year, and we've been successful at that. And we have some guys on the team from Colorado, and we have a guy on the team from New Mexico. So, I mean, we've had some guys from, some other states that have, decided to come out and get out here to the mountains in Central Virginia.
So
And
you mentioned being from Pennsylvania, so you want to pick from that pool, and we've
Yeah.
been talking about VMI, but you have a very interesting story in the sport of wrestling where you're the only guy on your high school wrestling team. So
Yeah.
I'm kind of curious how that was for you going
Yeah.
into a program and having to deal with teammates where you've never dealt with teammates before.
hmm
And the other part of that question is, do you look for guys from that smaller school, high school coming up to kind of help them get through the college system and how to develop teammate skills?
Yeah. So, um, my story, my junior year of high school, they dropped the team. So I went to a private high school, was still part of the PIAA, and I essentially went there to wrestle, right? I'm not necessarily proud of that, but that's the reality of the situation, right? But it was a good school, good academics, probably better than my public school at the time. The public school that I lived in, wrestling program wasn't strong. So my family, we made the decision that I was going to go there. I had a team for 2 years. My junior year, 6 kids came out for the team, and the administration was like, you know what, we're done with it. We're going to drop the program. They were gracious enough to kind of let me, stay on and compete under the umbrella of the school, but they were only going to do it for me, right? I didn't want to go back to my public school. I couldn't transfer if I tried to go to a different school, right? You run into the transfer stuff. So, I made the decision with my family to stay there. My coach at the time stayed on to help me out. My dad those were my two practice partners. And, I went through it my junior year. I ended up placing at the States for the first time my junior year in Pennsylvania. So it worked out pretty well for me. So I stayed on, did it again my senior year, ended up finishing as a runner up my senior year and, moving on to Edinburgh. But the whole experience, I think what it did, it forced me to mature very, very quickly. When you talk about, kind of being self-motivated and driven, without, teammates there to push you, I had to do that very quickly. And I had to make that decision like, hey, I want to try to be good at this. I'm going to do it regardless of whether I have teammates or not. And, I was training on my own, practicing, conditioning, the whole thing, right? It was just basically my only support system of my family. And, they were there through the whole process with me. And then when I transitioned over to Edinburgh, it was a little bit, it was a little challenging at first, just competition in the room, and you got really good guys and you're trying to find your way into the lineup. And, just kind of transitioning through that. But, I think it ended up being good for me to finally have some teammates, right? Just some consistency in my training and practice partners, guys there to push me every day. I saw my level rise, pretty quickly once I got to college, just because I had consistent partners and guys there to push me, on a daily basis compared to, being in high school with no one. So in the end, looking back, it was tough and challenging to go through, but I don't know that I would change it, right? After, looking back, however long ago that was at this point, I think it turned me into who I am today. And, I'm proud of that and proud of the story. And second part of your question, I don't think we necessarily target, guys from small schools, right? I mean, we have some guys on the team that from small schools, but in the end, we're just trying to go get the best fit, right? The best caliber wrestlers that we can get that are the best fits for VMI, kind of looking at the whole picture of it, regardless of whether they're from, a military type high school, a bigger school, smaller school, Pennsylvania guys, Virginia guys, whatever. We ultimately want the best fit and want guys that come in here that, live the right lifestyle, that take things serious, take their academics serious. Close second's got to be wrestling, and just want to come in here and live that lifestyle. I talk to these guys constantly about, living the right lifestyle. And they stumble, right? They're kids, when it comes down to it, they're 18 to 22-year-old kids, and they make mistakes. Everybody makes mistakes. I'm in my position and I make mistakes, and when it comes down to it, it's, I think, about limiting the severity of your mistake, right? And then not making the same mistake twice and learning from it, and just understanding that that's part of the development process, and being able to, overcome that and keep moving forward.
Another key component is owning that mistake too.
Yep.
Having the ability to man up and own what you did and acknowledge it, and doing better
Absolutely.
from that for sure. Coach, when you were at Edinburgh, what was that? Did you happen to cross paths with Josh Koscheck at all? Or were you before his time?
I was after him. He was he graduated the year before I got there. So he was a few years older than I was, but I think he graduated in 02, and then I graduated high school in 02. So we were 1 year off. Yeah.
So were you teammates with Gregor?
I was for 2 years. I was teammates with Gregor. Yeah. And the cool thing about Edinburgh too, just with the college coaching thing right now, there's for being a small school like that, there's actually three Division I coaches that came out of my graduating class at Edinburgh. There's myself, Alex Clemson's the head coach at Maryland, and then Matt Hill is the head coach at Edinburgh now. The three of us all graduated together from Edinburgh.
You guys get a try going yet, or what?
Not yet. We've talked about it. We've talked about it. Yeah. Because you got Roby down at Virginia Tech, which is close to us. He's an Edinburgh guy. Lou Roselli was out. He was at Ohio State there for a while, out at Oklahoma for a while. So yeah, we kicked around the idea, but it never came of anything.
Okay. All right. Coach, we talk to a lot of coaches, and we always bring up the topic of the CEO, the business side of being a head coach. I think for a lot of people that are fans that are listening and stuff, when they think of coaching, they always just think of the X and O component of being a coach. Sure. And when you're the head of a program, the X's and O's portion of it is a very, very small portion.
Yep.
What has that CEO experience been like for you? And is there something maybe that you enjoy, or is your strength, and something that you maybe dread and try to maybe delegate to one of your assistants?
Yeah. So it's been I think I was around some really good coaches, right? I spent time with Teague Moore at Clarion. Matt Dernlin was there for a year with me, and then I moved on to Bucknell. I was with Coach Warrensberger up there, and he's got a wealth of knowledge and experience, and I credit a lot to my development, to him. And he was really good about putting me in situations as an assistant to, prepare me for this role. You know what I mean? He delegated things to me that, maybe a lot of other assistants weren't doing. And, I was very thankful for that. And I still am, because that prepared me to step in here. And, I felt like I was ready to go right away, with all of the operational stuff from, the finance piece, the fundraising piece, the, running a staff, dealing with administration, all that stuff. And, I think one thing that I never would have thought this would have been the case, but I kind of enjoy the finance side of it, right? Like the budgeting and, especially here with us not being, a Power 5 school and a Power 5 conference, we got to be pretty frugal, and we got to make the most of our budget, and still try to give these guys the best and right Division 1 experience. I think that's what it comes down to, right? Is, we're a Division 1 program, and we got 35 guys that signed up to be Division 1 athletes. And I want to provide them the best Division 1 experience they can get. And not only is that just competitively in training, right? It's, hey, are we traveling right? Or we have enough gear, and, just give them that full experience to where they walk out of here and they're happy with it. And, I think that the finance side of it goes a long way, and just understanding, how to use the money, what money to spend on certain things, whether it's travel, whether it's gear, whether it's, food and nutrition and things like that. And I kind of enjoy that. And I never thought I would, right? When I finally got in charge of our own budget, that was just an area that I kind of was dreading a little bit, because I didn't have a ton of experience in it. But after I kind of really dived into it, I feel like we do a great job, and we do get the most out of it. And, VMI is great, as far as a fundraising aspect. We have the Key Deck Club. They do an incredible job for us, and making sure that we have everything that we need. And then, I think the one thing that I'm probably the weakest at is delegation, right? Not that I want to like have a say in everything, but it's just really hard for me to pass stuff off, because I'm like, hey, this is just something simple. I can do it sitting here at my desk. I might as well just do it, right? And rather than, pass it off to an assistant or whatever the case is. And I think that's just kind of my own mentality a little bit. And, I could probably do a little bit better of a job at, giving them some different things to do. But I think I've gotten better at it as I've gotten older. As I've gotten older, I put a little bit more on their plate and things, and try to take it off. And my kids, I got 2 kids, so I think that has a lot to do with it too, right? When I try to balance my family life and be there with my kids doing their sports and things like that. So try to utilize my assistants as well as I can, and they do a great job for me too. And those guys are on it, and committed to the program, and good people and good coaches.
Coach, so
Right,
you bring up that delegation, and we talked to Coach Dubuque at Princeton, and he was
Mhm.
telling us that when he was the assistant, he wasn't really too sure what the other guys were doing or what their jobs were.
Yeah.
Have you had any um times where someone came up to you, one of the assistants, like, hey, can you give me something to do? Like, I feel like I need to be doing something. Like, I see you doing all this stuff. Can you give me
Yeah.
something to do? Can I help you? Or did you have to come upon that on your own once you had kids and wanted to spend more time with them?
No, I think a little bit of both, right? I mean, my assistants are, they're younger, right? Obviously younger than me, and they want to progress their careers. So I mean, they're into it, right? They're in my office. Hey, how do we do this? If it's something I'm working on, whether maybe it's a budgeting thing, right, that they don't necessarily have a huge role in, they'll come in here, and when I'm doing it, and they'll sit and watch, and hey, where are we spending our money? Where does our money go? What does this, how, meetings with administration, how do they go? What did you guys talk about? So things like that, they're into it, and they want to learn and ultimately become, head coaches, I think someday. And, I think that's part of my job too, right? For them is, when that time comes for them, whenever that is, or wherever it's at, is that they're prepared like I was, and that's one thing. Anytime I brought a new coach in here, it's like, hey, that's part of my, speech to them is, when you're done here and your time's up, I want you to be prepared and ready to go off and run your own program or take the next step in your career, whatever that is. And, however I can help you do that, I want to be able to do it for them, because we're close, right? I mean, obviously we spend a lot of time together. We travel together. We're here all hours of the day. I probably see my assistant coaches and the guys on my team more than my own family, for certain parts of the year. And it's, we got a great relationship. It's there's never really a time to where they're coming and looking for something to do. They take it upon themselves, and if something needs done, they'll come in and take something off my plate, and vice versa. And there's times where I gotta say, hey, look, and I need some help with this, and and you guys get it done, and they're on it.
And you brought up the coach from Bucknell really got you ready to handle things you didn't think you were going to be ready for. Was there
Mhm.
anything just being at a normal school that you weren't prepared for going to a military institute?
I don't think anything can really prepare you for an atmosphere like this, right? There's so few of them that, not everyone has a chance to, coach in kind of this type of atmosphere. And I think from, the job perspective of just running the program and kind of that CEO piece of it, I don't think it's a whole lot different. The biggest transition was just kind of figuring out, the day-to-day lifestyle here, and kind of some of the nomenclature that they use, and why we can't do this at this time, and what's going on, and how to kind of balance and kind of close that gap between the military side of things and then the athletic side of things, right? That was the biggest challenge, and coming to a place like this. And like I said, I don't think there was anything that probably could have prepared me for it other than just getting in here and trying to hit the ground running, right? Asking a lot of questions, using my resources as far as my administration. And, with us being such a small athletic department, my AD, it's nothing for me to be able to walk over to my main AD's office and just walk in and, start a conversation or ask a question. He's pretty readily available, and so are all of our other administrative staff. It's a pretty close knit community here, close knit department. So I've used a lot of them as resources. Some of the other coaches that had been here prior to me, and just kind of getting their takes on it and seeing what worked for them, what didn't work for them, and then kind of putting my own spin on it.
Coach, you mentioned earlier the rich tradition at VMI Wrestling
Mhm.
starting in the 1920s, and you spent some
Yep.
time at Clarion, and they have a very unique um, um, post-match, I guess, celebration for when gentlemen record a pin. I'm
Yeah.
curious, do you guys have any, traditional workouts or some post-match traditions or anything like that at VMI?
Not necessarily. No, we don't. We don't have any like in match things like that. From a workout perspective, I think some of our preseason stuff when we're still doing some running and things. There's a lot of hikes and stuff out here, that we do, in preseason, things like that. So I don't know if our guys look forward to it because they're pretty challenging, but they have come, a little bit of a tradition for us. There's a mountain here called House Mountain. It's like, I think it's like around 3,800 feet in elevation. So these guys do that as part of their, they call it Hell Week here. These guys do that hike, every year. So we have a couple things like that kind of built into our training. But I try to mix it up as much as I can, when it comes to training for them, especially that time of year in preseason, just because, it can get, it's a long season, it gets monotonous. We try to challenge them, but also make things, exciting. And it's kind of almost a game for them to come in here, in preseason and try to guess what we're doing that day. You know what I mean? And, whether it's a run or whether it's some sprint laps or, stadiums, whatever it is, we try to mix it up as well as we can for them.
Being a military institution, when you're doing those hikes and stuff, you have the guys rucking.
I don't know. We just do it in workout gear. But when they do it with their companies and their cores, they're in like the fatigues and boots, and yep, they got their rucksack and they're up there. Yeah, it's pretty crazy sometimes around here. They do a lot of the drills, right? They have like field trainings and things, and it's not uncommon to drive through town on an afternoon and see a few hundred cadets in fatigues marching through town or marching across the bridge, going off to do some sort of military training. And it's kind of neat. There's another school here, in Lexington, Washington, and Lee. So we actually butt right up against each other, share some common land with them. So Lexington's a really cool spot, and the community is really involved in the two schools, the two institutions. So, um, it's a good atmosphere. You go down into town on a Friday night and go out to dinner with the family, and you see cadets out there in their uniforms, eating with their families, or hanging out and just spending time in town. So it's definitely a unique atmosphere here in Lexington. But we enjoy it. It's a good spot to raise a family. I know that.
So speaking on the traditions on the wrestling side, I'm curious
Mhm.
on the school side, I know some of the military institutes have traditions at the end of the year, ring the bell, climb the grease pole, or something like that.
Yeah,
Do you guys
yeah.
have anything like that?
So we don't have anything like that. The probably the biggest thing here is they call it ring figure. So what happens in your junior year, they call it the second classmen. They design the committee designs their rings, and they have a big ceremony. It's like college prom almost, kind of. They have a dance and a dinner and ceremony. They get their rings. So that's probably the one thing besides graduation, right, that everyone looks forward to here as a cadet is getting to that point in your cadetship and getting the ring and being able to wear it around. And the alumni, everyone, when they come back, everyone wears their ring. So it's a pretty big deal. They have in the museum here, they have one ring for every class all the way back to I want to say like 1849 or something. There's a few of them that are missing, but they're in a big case and they're on display. It's pretty cool to go back and see how they've changed over the years. In the 1800s they were a tiny little gold band with the VMI emblem on it, and now they've turned into these big elaborate rings, with the gems and carvings and all that. But we try to make a big deal out of it for our guys. They get them, they come down to practice, they wear them, they show them off. So it's a pretty cool experience for them.
And you bring up Lexington being a really cool community that gets behind the colleges that are in town. I'm
Yep.
curious when the guys get to go out on town. Do they have
Hmm.
curfews? What's that life like?
Yeah, they do. So they do taps in the evening for them, so they have to be back, on post, in barracks and kind of in their room, by a certain time every night. During the week, it's I'm gonna say like 11:15, 11:30, and then on the weekends it moves. It's like midnight, and then I think Saturdays it might be 1 a.m. or something. That they can kind of be out and doing things, but then they do have to be back. Yeah, they have certain weekends where they call them general permit weekends, to where they're allowed to completely leave, go home, go visit friends, whatever it is, they're allowed gone from the time class ends on Friday till they have to be back and checked in Sunday evening. But those are few and far between. Though it's usually maybe a couple times a semester, if that those happen, and they get certain privileges. If they're doing certain things really well, or sometimes they'll do them for sporting events. If one of the sporting teams does really well, or has a big win or something like that, they'll reward the entire corps with like a free weekend or something like that. So they kind of try to integrate, the athletic side of things, and reward the cadets for some good behavior, like I said, good sporting outcomes, things like that. So they get behind the athletes here for sure. I mean, the football games, they make every single cadet attend every home game. So all 1,800 cadets are at the games. They'll do some certain things for us, to where if cadets will come down to the matches, they'll give them a formation off or something like that to incentivize them to attend the sporting events. And they get kind of rowdy. They get into it, and they bang their rings. So there's like some railings in our competition arena here, and they'll put their rings on and they'll bang them on the railings and make some noise. And I don't think a whole lot of them know a lot about wrestling. So anytime someone gets picked up or slammed down, they're always hooting and hollering and making a big deal out of it. So it's kind of entertaining.
It must be nice to have a built-in fan base,
Yeah.
and
Yep. Yep.
I guess maybe sometimes the athletes might feel a little extra pressure to do well, so maybe they can get some good time for good behavior.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a good thing, though.
Yeah, yeah,
Let's put some pressure on
no
them.
doubt, no doubt. Well, with all that being said, we appreciate you sharing everything about the program, but let's,
Yeah.
how has the season been going for you? How's the outlook? You got your conference. You guys are in the SoCon, correct? And
Yep.
how's all that
Yep.
been going? And how are things looking here mid-January?
Yeah, we're 6-5 right now, so we're on the better side of 500. Hoping last year, we went 9-8. It was the first time our program had a winning record in 20 years. So we kind of, we saw a little bit of light at the end of the tunnel from all the work that we've been putting in, and I think we have a chance to follow suit again this year from our dual meet perspective, coming out at 500 or better, and that's kind of the goal for us right now, just with where we're at in the season. And we start our SoCon conference schedule coming up here this coming weekend. We start off with Chattanooga. So they're typically, on the upper end of the conference. And, I think we match up with them well. So we're looking forward to, kicking off our conference schedule. And then we get a couple guys that I think are really close to, cracking into those rankings. So hopefully we can, get those guys a couple good wins here leading into conference and get a couple extra spots at some weight classes and, punch a guy through to Kansas City. This is always an exciting time of the year. I think, our guys are just getting back into school. Classes start up tomorrow. So, some normalcy again as far as, living situation and training kind of out of that, Christmas time phase. And we're excited about it. I'm a big one day at a time, right? One practice at a time, one match at a time, trying to not look too far ahead. We got Chattanooga on Sunday. We got, 5 or 6 days of preparation here that we're going to get after, and we'll get through that match, and then we'll see where we're at and reset for the next weekend.
When do you guys scrap Presbyterian?
I think, let's see, we got Chattanooga this weekend. We're at the Citadel the following weekend, and then I think we have Presbyterian after that. So we're 2 or 3 weeks away from headed down there.
So you'll be down here in Clinton?
Yep, we'll be down there. We wrestle those guys, I think, on Saturday, and then we jump on the bus and head to Boone and wrestle App State on Sunday in the same weekend.
All right, I might have to get in the car and come on over and support y'all.
Yeah, it'd be great.
Although Coach Cody might be mad if I start rooting for VMI because we've had him on as well too.
I gotcha. He's a good dude though, Mark Cody. He's a good guy. I've always been a huge fan of him. He's always treated me really well.
And his son wrestled in 3A, and so we were in the same division with the school that I coach for. So I got to chat with him a little bit, and then his other son runs track, and so I got to chat him up a little bit at some of the track meets we hosted at our school too.
I'm going through that right now too. So I have a 10-year-old son, and he's wrestling, and it's being a coach and a dad and trying to balance that is definitely challenging. But he does a good job. My son's into it, and he's been at it now for a couple of years. So it's fun. It's definitely rewarding to see him out there and getting after it. But you know how it is being a coach and having your own son out there. It's a whole different level of emotions compared to the college guys. I always thought I got emotional enough with the college guys, and the first time he stepped out there, I was blown away with the emotions running through me. But it's definitely fun with the little guy.
As a D1 coach, do you have any tips for moms or dads out there that are getting their kids into wrestling?
Enjoy it. That's the only thing I can say, right? I mean, I think you want to put them in the best position, whatever that is, right? I think some take it really serious, and you got some other kids that are just doing it to have some fun. And I think you got to gauge where your own child is at that point in their career and time, and just try to put them in the best position to learn and be successful, right? And whatever that is, I think it's different for everybody. You have fun, right? That's a big piece of it. Everybody always talks about the fun aspect of it. But it is wrestling, right? There's only so much fun you can have, with it, I think sometimes. And I think it just comes down to the lessons, right? I'm just trying to put him in a position to, be successful, whatever he does. He plays some other sports, plays football, plays baseball, he wrestles. I want him to whatever pathway he chooses, and maybe it's not even sports. I don't know, but hopefully, he can take the lessons from the athletic side of things and, apply them to whatever it is that he chooses to go on and do. And if it's wrestling, great. If it's football, great. If it's, academics, he wants to go be a scholar or whatever it is. I just want to put him in the best position to be successful and help him along the way and build our relationship. We do a lot together. He's in my practices a lot, he likes lifting weights we get in there, I lift weights with him, and we just enjoy it. We just try to enjoy the process, and we don't, we take it serious, but we don't take it so serious to where it hurts our relationship. I think that's a big thing out there with parents. Sometimes I think they forget that, in the end, it comes down to having a good relationship with your kids and, just preparing them for whatever it is they want to go on and do.
That's beautiful.
There's no right or wrong way. That's one thing I've learned about it. When it comes to parenting, especially trying to, coach your kids in athletics, there's no right or wrong way ever. They're all individuals. You got to do what's best for them. Get to know them as well as you can. And, some guys can, take a little bit more than others and take some criticism and not some criticism. You got to love them. You got to know when to love them, when to kind of put them in their place a little bit, and just try to do it as well as you can.
Coach, I'm curious if you have a dad hat and a coach hat.
For my son.
For your son, yeah. Are there times where you let his coach, or are you the coach? And are there
No, I'm
times
the
when,
coach.
so
I'm the coach.
are there times when you say this is coach talking, not dad talking, and vice
No,
versa?
I try to do it all as one, to be honest. And I don't know if that's right or not, but I feel like I have some experience and I can be valuable to him as a coach. And I try to coach him as dad, right? And it's definitely tough, but we're really close, and he understands that and knows what I do, um, and I think that probably puts more pressure on him than he probably puts more pressure on himself, because he knows what I do more than any pressure I could put on him, right? And I think that's the part of it that's challenging. I think for him more than it is me, almost, because he's kind of at that age where he understands. He understands what I do, and he wants to. We're trying to get out of the whole thing. Hey, don't go out there and do it for dad, sort of thing, right? Just go have some fun and wrestle for you, and I'm gonna love you regardless of the outcome. It doesn't matter. You know what I mean? And in the end, you're 10 years old. The wins and losses have no bearing on anything right now. You know what I mean? No one's gonna remember whether you win or you lose at 10 years old. If this turns out to be something that he wants to do, well, when the time comes to start taking it a little bit more serious, we'll get him prepared and ready. And if that's what he wants to do, I'll be here for him, and he can come to me when that time comes. Someone gave me some really good advice sometime, and it was a college coach that was coaching his sons, and his son was not having a ton of success, and his son came to him one day all upset and mad, and he was like, Dad, you're so and so, and you do all this Division I college wrestling coaching. Why won't you help me? Right? And he was like, guess what? You came to me. Now it's my turn. Now let's go do it, because it came from you and you were the one that wanted it. So I'm trying to mimic that a little bit, right? Like, I'm here for him and try to advise them as well as I can, but I'm kind of waiting for him to kind of take that ownership of when he wants to do it and when he wants to kind of take that next step. And like I said, if that happens, we'll hit the ground running and do it. And if it doesn't, it's no big deal, right? He's going to go on, and I think he's a good enough young man, and he'll go on and do some great things, or whatever that turns out to be, and I'll be here for him.
Coach, thanks for sharing that perspective with
Yeah,
us.
yeah,
I can hear the love and the passion you have for your son and
yeah,
wrestling all in one. So I thank you for that side.
yeah. No problem, no problem. Listen, I'm an open book. I try to tell it how it is, and I'm not hiding anything. I think that's the recruiting side of it too, right? Putting that hat back on is, when it comes to recruiting, I lay it out there. This is how it is. This is who I am. This is what you're getting. If it's a good fit, then hey, let's sign on the dotted line and let's do this together. And if it's not, I understand. Like, you got to find the place to where you feel like you fit in the best, to where you feel like you can be successful. And if that's VMI, great, let's do it. If it's not, I'm going to wish you well. I might be disappointed for a couple of days that you're not coming here, right? But in the end, it's got to be a two-way street. It's like dating. You know, if you like a girl more than she likes you, it's probably not going to work out very well for anybody, but when everyone's on the same page and you're excited about an opportunity, and you can go on and do great things together, because it's going to be hard, right? You're going to go through peaks and valleys and highs and lows. And I think in our sport in particular, there's way more many lows than there are highs, right? And I've been doing this, quite a while now, and I can probably count on one or maybe two hands of all the times in the sport, as an athlete and as a coach, that I was really excited. You know what I mean? We won a big match. A guy, I won a big match. The team did really well, whatever it is. Those moments are, few and far between in our sport, but you can go on and on and on for days about all the moments that were really tough, right? You thought you lost a match, you thought you were supposed to win, you had a hard workout, you sacrificed in your diet, whatever it is, right? And ultimately, what's going to define you and define your career is how you respond to those moments. Are you going to point the finger and blame a coach or blame a teammate or blame a teacher for a bad grade or whatever it is? Or you're going to roll your sleeves up, lift your chin, stick your chest out, and climb yourself out of the valley, right? And that's what's going to bring you into authentic manhood. We talked about it a little while before. You're going to hit that moment in life of, hey, something's going to happen, and you're going to have to find a way to fight through it. Well, what did you do when you did that before, right? It's not, you can't just flip a switch and know how to persevere. At least I believe that, right? You gotta put yourself in those positions as often as possible. Right. And I think that's my coaching philosophy is I'm going to bring these guys in here every day and challenge them mentally and challenge them physically and make them persevere and, fight through something. And when the match is on the line and they're down by a point or 2 points and there's 30 seconds left and their lungs are burning, it's second nature to them because they've experienced it hundreds of times in practice and they can go out and get the job done.
Coach, you got me fired up. We get off of here. I think I might go down and grab the Bulgarian bag and spin it
Yeah,
around
there
for a
you
half
go.
hour.
There you go.
Love it.
Rich,
Coach,
if you
I
got
got
another one, go.
yeah, I got one more before we get into our final four. I'm curious, you're a Pennsylvania guy, but you've been down in Virginia
Hmm.
for a bit now. When you're not coaching wrestling or being a dad,
Yep.
what is the most Virginia thing you've done since you've been down there?
Oh, I don't know. So I have one hobby, right? I have outside of coaching and my family, I have one hobby. I fish. I like to fish. That's not necessarily a Virginia thing. I've fished my whole life. So if I'm not, doing my day-to-day routine, with my family and work, I try to get out and fish as much as possible, right? There's a lot of good fishing down here. Mountains, cold water. I was never much of a trout fisherman until I moved down here, but that seems to be all there is here. So I've kind of transitioned to that a little bit, and I'm still learning and trying to figure out that game of it. But I enjoy it, and whether I catch anything or not, it's I get out. I got one buddy that I go with, pretty consistently, and it's just a good time to get out and get away and not think about work, not think about wrestling, and just enjoy being outside. That's my one and only. I don't do much else other than
Yeah, that's
that.
enough. That's enough. It's there's a lot of benefits of being in nature and being in water too. So you're doing it right.
Yeah.
Coach, is
The
there
one
any
Go ahead,
guy.
Coach.
finish? You can finish that statement. I'm
I
sorry.
was just gonna say we're just the one thing in Virginia that has caught me off guard more than anything is um, when we get weather, right? So I'm being in Edinburgh, Northwest Pennsylvania, we got snow all the time. It was just a thing, and we're getting some weather right now, a little bit of snow. If they just forecast snow here, everything shuts down, right? With the first winter we were here, my son was in kindergarten. We're sitting at home in the morning, my wife and him, and he's getting ready for school. Well, they start forecasting for snow and they cancel school, right? And my wife and I are just dumbfounded. We're looking at each other like, what's going on here? There's not a snowflake in the sky, nothing. Well, they cancel school. It doesn't snow for 2 full days, and he's out of school for 3 days leading up to a snow, right? That's 3 days away. And that's been probably one when we're talking about like Virginia stuff. It's been just one of the biggest transitions for us. Was they cancel school here for the littlest things, and it's just trying to figure out. I still can't figure it out, and just equip for it, whatever it is. But they shut down school here for the smallest forecast of weather. It's wild.
Yeah, I hear you, Coach. We lived in Leadville, Colorado for a while, but I'm down here in South Carolina. We had a day off and an early dismissal last week for rain.
Yeah, that same here. Same thing here. Yep, yep. Yeah.
Coach, is there anything on VMI Wrestling that we haven't talked about that you think our audience should know?
Um, I think just the tradition, right? I think that's a big piece of it. You know, the 100 years of tradition. There's been multiple SoCon champs here individually. There's been a couple trophies brought home during that time frame, and the history and tradition of wrestling is something at VMI, right? And I think that's just kind of been one of those things that's been maybe overlooked or just people are unaware of. But this is a wrestling school. I think the sport fits with the type of institution we are, and it's twofold. And I just want people to know and understand that this is a wrestling school. People are excited about wrestling here.
Well, you got us excited about wrestling, and I'm
Good.
super stoked for this conversation we had tonight. That, like Rich said before, going to the Presbyterian match, you'd have a hard time. Who am I going to root for? Doing this podcast gives us a lot more schools to root for and a lot more people
Good.
to watch. Because for me, not wrestling and not coaching anymore, it's hard to like find that connection to watch. But through this
Sure.
podcast, the connections we made, the awesome conversations we've had gives us
Yep.
more teams to root for. So thank you for that.
Yeah.
So
Well, I
we,
appreciate I appreciate you guys too, just giving us some time and spotlighting our program. It means a lot. It was kind of like you guys said at the beginning. There's always a lot of press and stuff on your Power Five schools and that thing, and it just means a lot that you guys are taking the time to have me on and highlighting our program.
Yeah, I think
thank
it's just,
you.
yeah, thank you. And I think it's just important for kids to know that if you really want to wrestle in college, there's a place for you to wrestle in college. And
Yep.
with what the NWCA is doing, the sport is growing. Um, if you have a passion and a desire to wrestle for another 4 years and extend your career and possibly even do better than what you did in high school,
Yep.
there is a place for you. And we're just trying to highlight those places so kids know that, there's doors that can be open for you.
Absolutely.
All right, coach, we got the final four questions we
All
ask
right.
all our guests at the end of every podcast.
Okay.
First one I have for you is, are you a coffee drinker?
Yes.
All right. How do you brew your coffee and how do you take it?
Traditional pot, just traditional filter grinds in the pot. And then I'm a mix, right? Sometimes I'll do it black, and then sometimes I'll put a tiny little bit of milk in it,
All
a
right.
splash of milk. I don't like it too sweet. I'm not one of those specialty coffee drinkers, but I will put a little cream or milk in it every once in a while.
Right on. 1 cup, 2 cups all day. How's
One,
your
I'm a tradition 1 cup. I have 1 cup usually in the morning, and that's it. Every once in a while, I'll have an afternoon cup, but that's pretty rare.
okay, right on. Coach, do you have any daily practices or rituals that you do on a regular basis to show up as the strongest version of Jim Gibson? And if not included, do you have a favorite way to sweat?
Um, I don't know if I have any daily rituals. I think at night, I do try to put my phone away, as much as I can, and just kind of spend some time with my wife. My wife and I have been together since we were 15 years old. We went to high school
Respect.
together, went through college together. So I think that's kind of my not safety net, but that's kind of my comfort zone, right? And in the evening, I like to try to put my phone down and just spend a little bit of time with her, whether it's 15 minutes, 30 minutes, an hour, whatever it is, however much time we have in the evening, is just put the phone away and just spend a little bit of time with her in the evening. And then as far as workout, I try to do as much different things as possible. I love a good sweat. I have a sauna in my house. I'll go in the sauna every once in a while, but I try to mix it up as much as I can. I'm not I don't like a systematic kind of routine to a workout, right? One day I might feel like lifting weights, I'll go lift weights. I might have a running bug, I might jump on the treadmill, I might ride the bike, I might go play a 2-on-2 basketball. I just try to be as active as possible, whatever that looks like, for me.
Excellent.
Coach, what are you listening to right now? Music, podcast, audiobooks? Are you reading anything?
So I got into this app recently. It's called Blinkist. It's like they take these, self-help books or whatever you want to call them, and then kind of breaks them down, right, and kind of pulls important points out of them, and takes a long audio book and turns it into, about a 20 to 30 minute kind of highlight or cliff notes, if you want to call it, of certain books. So I've kind of gotten into that recently, over the last couple months. So I've been doing that. And then as far as what I'm listening to from a music perspective, I'm all over the board. I do enjoy music. I'll listen to anything from classic rock to country to 90s alternative. I mean, I'm pretty much a full connoisseur when it comes to music.
Who's controlling the aux cord in the wrestling room?
I let the guys do it. I'm not. I don't. There's too many different likes and things on our team. I try to stay away from it. I let them go and pick whatever they're into that day, or whoever jumps on it first, they get on it and run with it. I'm really not. I'm not too picky about it.
Right on. Coach, last one we got for you. Do you have a guilty pleasure and or a vice? It could be food. It could be music. Are you a Swiftie?
um, I do like a good ice cream.
Okay.
If I'm gonna indulge in anything, I'll hit Dairy Queen up every once in a while and get a good blizzard.
Okay. Do you mix it up or do you have a set regiment that you
No,
go with
I
your
mix it
blizzard?
up. I mix
Okay.
it up. It's whatever I'm feeling. It's usually a last minute decision. I pull up to the drive through and just whatever sparks my interest at that moment, that's what I'm going with.
Right on. Awesome.
Coach, thanks again for your time tonight.
No
Thanks again
problem.
for giving us another team to root for, and best of
Got
luck
it.
with the rest of the season.
Thank you. Appreciate it, guys.